I've been in your waters. One thing for sure, I've never been so close before. It's one way or the other. One thing for sure, I've never been so close before.
Hey guys, and welcome back to part 2 of our roof swap. So in this episode we're going to be showing you guys how to do some lead work. So first things first, always make sure that you've got some protective gear. Remember that lead is highly poisonous, so definitely a bad idea to be handling it without any care. Rule number 1 of lead: never sand lead. So if you've got, for instance, our lead bars here, if they've got contamination on them, wash them down, don't sand them, because all that you're doing is you're spraying lead particles into the atmosphere and endangering everybody around you. So a couple of things that we're going to need for this: we've got our wooden blocks. These are homemade ones, and I'm pretty sure we've had them for a good couple of years, but they do the job well, and I prefer to work with them. Then we've got some ram wax. So some guys use tallow, some guys use ram wax. And then we've got our wire brush that we're going to be using together with our solder paint or our tinning paste, with a paintbrush for that. We've got a small handheld torch that's only going to be for the sake of the block. And we've got our oxyacetylene torch as well. We're going to be having to use that. We've got a clean rag. We've got a rag to wipe the oil off the block. We've got a special file for the lead, steel body file. You don't want to sand lead, so this one kind of makes it into shavings, so it's not something that goes into the atmosphere pretty easy. We've got 2 different grids of sandpaper here. That's just to help prep the panel a little bit. And then we've got our lead bars. We'll probably, for the job we're doing, you're going to need about 2 of those. Then I've got a tin here with a sponge on the inside. Now basically what it is, I took some old sump oil, strained it, put it into the sponge, and I'm going to be showing you guys what we're going to need that for. So first things first, in the process of prepping this, you want to prepare your wooden blocks. So what we're going to be doing is we're first going to be dumping it into our sump oil. Then we're going to be burning it with the handheld torch. After that, we're going to apply some ram wax on it. We're going to wipe that off. You don't want it to become too oily either. So that's going to be the first step of this. So we'll start out with that, and then I'll show you guys from there on. Okay guys, so I'm going to be showing you how we're going to prep our blocks here. So we've got our spring blocks, and then I've got the bucket with the sponge and the old strained sump oil. So first thing that we're going to do, we've got some fine sandpaper. So you want to grab the face side, and we're going to give it a light sand, just basically to remove any contamination on it. Make sure that it's nice and clean. Any surface that might contact with it. Some corners require the full bend around the side here, so I clear that as well. The front pieces. Okay, then what we're going to do is you take your bucket with your sump oil, and we're just going to press it into the sponge a few times until we've got the surface completely covered. There we go. So we've got a nice and even coat on there. Yeah, so basically what we want to do is you want to get your glove on, and then we want to grab our handheld torch, fire that up, and then all that we're going to do is you're heating up the old sump oil, and what that's creating is you're creating almost like a hardened coat on top of your wood, like a kind of a sealer coat. Um, so that's all that that's helping to achieve. So that's the first step, is hardening your block, and that's with the old engine oil. So then we've got a rag here, wipe that down. You don't want to leave any trace of this on it. It's still oil based, so you don't want it to transfer onto any bodywork or anything like that. So we wipe that down, and then while it's still hot, we want to grab our ram wax, grab a little bit of that, and once again we're just doing a very thin coat on here. You don't want to do a thick coat where you've got oil running down everywhere. It's literally just a coverage coat. Now, I've tried tallow in the past. I've tried the sump oil, going further than just using it for hardening. And out of the lot, what I've seen works the best is the ram wax. It lasts a bit longer on your wood, more than tallow does. So I prefer using that above anything else. So that's the first block. I'll do the other two as well. And then we're going to talk through the first stage of prepping our panel. We're going to be using our sandpaper for that. So yeah, from there on I'll prep those two as well, and then we're going to start off with. Now, when it comes to lead work, there's a couple of not negotiables. There are a couple of variables. There's more than one way to skin a cat when it comes to this. But a couple of not negotiables are: point number one, the first thing that you want to do is you want to make sure that whatever you're leading is super clean. And then what we do as well to help the process along, you grab a bit of sandpaper, and all that you're doing with that is you're making sure, point number one, to create a rough surface. Point number two, you're helping clean any possible problems that there is. Now, during this moment, if there's any high spots or anything that's in your way or that you foresee being a problem, it's a great idea to have your pinning hammer with you. And all that you're going to be doing, let's say for instance, there's a slight bit of a high spot there. And all that you want to do is you just want to give it a light tap. And basically, what that's doing, you're not trying to be Thor, you're literally just tapping it a little bit further down, so it's not going to rise above the level that we're going to be leading on. So we've got the surface clean now. Then the second not negotiable is you have to tin whatever you're gonna lead. If you don't tin it, the lead will not stick to it. So that's always a golden rule when it comes to doing any lead work. So what we're gonna be doing after this, we're gonna be cleaning here just with a wet rag. Just wipe it all down, make sure it's super clean. And then what we're going to be doing is we're going to be starting to add our tinning paste onto here. Then we're going to grab our oxyacetylene torch and we're going to be starting to heat it up. And then I'll bring the camera closer by and I'll show you guys exactly how it's going to react and when to know when the metal's tinned and when not. Okay, so we've got our wet rag. A lot of guys add in a bit of baking soda. Some guys add in citric soda. The more you add in to neutralize, the better. And all that we're doing is we're doing a first wipe down. We're going to wipe it down again after we're done with the tinning paste. So first, we just want to make sure that where we're working is clean. And we're just going to leave it to dry for a second. And then we're going to start applying our tinning paste and making sure that that's even and well spread throughout the whole panel. So we just grab a dry rag and just help wipe it down. This speeds up the process a little bit. Now, the next step of this, you always want to make sure that you tin further than what you anticipate going. That's going to help you prevent from being caught off guard and trying to stick lead on a piece that we can't stick to. So we're going to be painting this up quite a bit. Now there are different percentages of tinning paste. You get a 40% and a 60%. I normally take the 60% and tinning paste, and then I mix it with a 80 to 20 ratio for a soldering paint. The soldering paint helps keep the tinning paste almost. It prevents it from drying out, if I can put it that way. So, and then the important bit is around the post as well. There is going to be some lead work around the back section. There is a seam there as well, so you want to make sure you've got that tinned as well. You don't have to be shy with this coat. Really make sure that you've got everywhere covered, and make sure that it's evenly spread through everywhere where you're going to be working. Into your drip rail channel as well, there's always a bit of lead that goes around there, so you really want to make sure that's well covered as well. So now that we've got that on, you need your oxyacetylene torch. Now, there are some guys that swear by it, that you use different nozzles for this. You can use any nozzle, to be honest about it. There's no specific right or wrong when it comes to this. Some guys don't use oxyacetylene, but when you're using oxyacetylene, try and adjust your flame so you've got a wider spread flame. We live in Africa, so we have access to everything that we want. This works great for me. I've used it for many years like that. So then basically what you're going to do is you're going to start to apply heat to your tinning paste. Now, I just want to grab the wire brush as well. Now, what we're doing is we are applying heat to this. Now, basically, it's got microscopical bits of lead in it, and that combined with the acid is going to help basically create the correct surface for you to work on. So you don't want to apply too much heat when doing this. Keep it further away, and then you'll see there's tiny like little silver balls forming as you're doing this. Now, the trick about the wire brushes, always use a clean brush or a brush that you keep aside that you use just for this. You don't want to go and contaminate anything with oil, anything that doesn't have to be there. I'll see if I can bring the camera a little bit closer later to show you the close-up of the little lead balls it's forming, and that's basically how you know that it's being prepped. Now, the rough surface on the sandpaper helps as well, because you're creating a surface that's easier for the lead to actually start forming on and sticking on. So the more you do that, the better. And then we're going to grab our wire brush, and we're going to start wiping as we're heating the panel. And basically what that's doing, it's just helping create a even surface all around, straight through. Just make sure that the tinning paste gets in everywhere, not just in some sections. And you'll see as I'm busy brushing it, you can actually see a very shiny surface come through, and that's how you know that your tinning paste is doing its job. It's actually creating almost like a bit of a pre-leaded surface. So that's basically why we do this. You'll see my torch, the bit of a spread flame that it makes. Now that's what helps. You don't want a narrow flame. You want to create a even spread of heat as you're busy working. You can't overdo this. So always take your time when you're doing this. There's no rush. Once again, when doing anything that involves a roof, you don't want lead to come loose a couple of years down the line. So take your time with this. Do it as much as you can. And it's kind of a practice thing. The more you do it, the more you get used to doing it, the easier it gets. Really, really shiny surface it's starting to show you, and that's what you want to go for. Once again, careful of moving too much into your roof skin, so always be wary of that as well. Now, when it comes to cleaning this off, some guys use just a rag, some guys use a paper towel, some guys use the rag with water, some guys use it with baking soda, some guys use it with citric soda. Once again, there's no right or really right or wrong when it comes to this, but I'm just giving advice on what I've seen works for me over the years. So for me, the best thing that you can use to clean this off is a rag wet with some baking soda in the water or citric soda. It works the best for neutralizing any bit of the acidity that's left from the flux. So you've got that really shiny surface emerging as we're going with this. And you can see the tiny little lead balls that's forming on the surface, and that's exactly what you want to see when you're busy with your tinning process. That means that the surface is well primed and you know that your lead's going to stick to it pretty easy. I'm going to show you a close-up now of a surface that's tinned versus a surface that's not tinned yet. Just to give you a close-up feel of that, I just want to finish this small piece here. Make sure that that's well tinned. And once again, it's a bit of a timely thing to do, but it's something that has to be done. It's not negotiable for lead. Believe me, if you don't do it, the lead will refuse to stick on it. And the moment you start using your body file to work it down, you'll have lifting corners and stuff. Let me bring the camera closer quickly. Alright, now if you have a close look at this, you can see in this area you've got tiny little lead balls forming, and you've got that almost like a glossy surface, versus an area like that you can actually see where the heat radius stopped actually turning the metal. So all that you want to do is you want to make sure that you've got the whole area covered, where you're going to be leading. So what we're going to be doing from here on is we're going to grab our wet rag. And you want to give this a wash down. Try not to force cool the panel. That's not good either. Um, and you know what? Don't be shy if there's a little spot. There's like a little spot here that I'm not happy with, that you might have to retin. And that's okay as well. Rather come back and fix it now than try and do it later when it's too late and it's lifting your lead. So just giving that a bit of a pre-wash down. I'm just going to wipe it down again, and then I'm going to redo that one spot, same process, and then I'll re-pick up the video once we've got it properly cleaned up with a rag, and where we're actually going to start the actual leading process. Okay, so now we're ready to start with the actual lead work. Pair of gloves for that. It can get pretty hot. And then we've got our lead stick, we've got our wooden paddles, spread blocks, then we've got our oxyacetylene torch. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to get that lit. You don't need massive amounts of heat for this. Flame like that is pretty okay. That's more than what you need. And then we've got soldering block. So the first thing that we want to do is you want to start to heat up your panel. Actually, a bit of moisture that came out from underneath the panel. Okay, so actually I had to go back with a clean wire brush, and I had to re-clear that spot and re-tin it. But once again, the only rule is that you can never tin on a surface that's not clean and not prepped. So sometimes you have to go back. It happens. And then we've adjusted our flame. Go slightly colder. You don't need massive amounts of heat for this. And once again, you want a pretty broad kind of a flame. So we've readjusted that. Smaller bit of oxygen. Then we've got our wood paddle. We've got our lead bars. So first thing that you want to do is we want to start to heat up the panel. You will see after we washed it, it went of a bit of a dull color. And then as we're reheating it, the lead is actually going shiny again. The lead that's part of your tinning paste. Now what the heat is doing, it's kind of reactivating the lead that's already on the panel now. So that's going to help prime the surface for where you want your lead to stick to. So then you want to start to heat up your lead bar. It goes molten pretty quick because it's lead and it melts pretty easy. Now this is not the easiest spot to lead because it's a vertical surface that we're sticking on. Now what I normally like to do first is just get my lead actually on the surface and get it to stick to the surface, and then we'll come back with a paddle and start pressing it into place where we want it to go. Actually running nicely into the a bit of a contour there. There's a couple of ways that you can do this. You can drip it in, hold the lead bar higher and then literally drip the lead in, or you can work the bar into this, kind of just by applying heat and watching it actually run into where you want it to go. And then sometimes you need to add more where you're busy working. It depends on the volume of the area. Sure, that's okay for now. Just want to swap ends. And then what you want to do, you want to start adding heat and you want to continuously test to see if the lead has gone to a bit of a molten state. So there you'll see it started to go soft. So now you can start spreading it. We're definitely going to need a little bit more lead in this area, but we'll work this in first and then we'll reapply and rework and reapply. It's a very timely process. It takes quite a bit of time to get the right amount of lead in the right places. So it's continuously applying heat and pressing and applying heat and pressing. You want it to almost be like a bit of a just a little bit more liquid than I would say something like peanut butter, probably like a kind of a mayonnaise kind of a texture once you start pressing it. You don't want it to be full liquid because then it's going to run out of the area you're trying to work it into. You see it's slowly starting to work into the areas where we want it to go. When it comes to the deep areas where you're working the lead into, there you do want to go a little bit closer to molten. For the simple reason you really want it to go into all the voids that you're trying to fill. Lead work takes a lot of practice. It's one of those things that the more you do it, the easier it gets. But once again, it's not something that you want to rush. Takes a lot of time to get used to the idea and not losing lead on the floor. I can assure you the first couple of times I did this a couple of years back, I'm sure half of my lead ended up on the floor. And that's okay. Sometimes you know what, you need to start learning somewhere. So even if it takes a good couple of tries to get it figured out and really get used to it. You'll see I'm actually starting to spread it now into the area we want to work towards. So you'll see it's actually starting to really go flat there. Just want to grab another bomb. That one's heated up quite a bit. And then normally what I do is all the little short handles that end up together, I remelt those and just basically rejoin them to one another. I'm going to work quite a bit more into this. Because it's quite a big area that we're busy filling. So if you pay close attention, you'll see that if you look at the lead, you'll spot very easy when it's starting to go molten. So it's pretty easy to identify. What I'm doing now is just creating a bit of heat back into the panel because I kind of want to work it back into that roof skin quarter over there. So I like to start working with this end first. The other end is a little bit more trickier to do because you're heating a panel both sides. And then if you really want to get the area smoothed out, you want to do a bit of a, almost like a type of a swipe action on your pedal. But normally I'm not too concerned about that. It's going to get filed down in anyway, so and I'm not too worried about how the top surface turns out. But you want to try and get it as flat and smooth as you can. It's going to save you a lot in the filing process. And then once you've got it in a lead state, it's literally like kind of spraying peanut butter around. Sometimes you have to go back and you have to reseal and reheat your paddle first, and that's also okay. Sometimes you'll see the lead will actually start to stick to it quite a bit. Um, I've been fortunate on this one, but it's not impossible that you have to go back sometimes. Just a side note, something if you're making your own paddle from home, try and use a wood that's pretty solid, hardwood. Don't use a softwood. It burns too easy. This one I made is from Rhodesian teak, pretty hardwood. That works pretty well for me. Okay, now this is the bit that I normally really enjoy, and that's smoothing out the lid. So I'm going to be showing you guys how to do that. And that's normally where your bigger block is pretty handy instead of the smaller handheld paddle. It's a block that I've made a couple of years ago. So you want to up your heat a little bit. We've got a bigger block. And then all I'm doing is I'm creating heat all along the seam. So once you've got your lead smoothed out, and then you slowly start doing tests to see if it's got liquid. And then all that you're doing is you're slowly applying heat and you're spreading it with a bigger block. Careful of too much, otherwise it's going to melt out again. And once again, this is something that saves a lot of time later in the filing process of things. So you'll see I'm starting a little bit below the lead, and then I'm kind of doing like a swipe action on it. And then that's what you want to do. And slowly you'll start to see your lead starting to smooth out. Sometimes you have to swipe a bit from the top, a little bit to the left, a little bit to the right. And then you want to swipe it past where the lead is. So you start below the lead, and then you swipe past the top of it, and then you make sure you distribute your heat evenly throughout the two. See how nice that seam is starting to look. And then there's always a bit of lead that drips into the gutter rail. So what I normally do is I just heat that up and let it drip out itself. So it's running out. back, and you just re-level that little bit, and then you've got a clear gutter rail as well. Normally inside your gutter rail is a little bit more tricky one to do. So I've got a thinner wood block that I use for the. There we go, nice and smooth. So let me bring the camera around. There we go. Now you'll see I purposefully left some lead there. I'll just bring my heat back down again. And what you do is you heat it a little bit, it's dropping over the ledge. Press test. Heat top to bottom. And then you do your swipe action again. And then as you're going around the corner, you heat press. You'll see if there's a little spot that goes a bit crumbly, means that your panel was too cold when you applied the lead. So you reheat it and you respread it. And there we go. Then we have a section that has now been smoothed. There we go. And look, you can spend more time on it, but you also have to ask yourself what's reasonable in spending time on this. Like this for me is more than enough. I'm happy with that. It's a good surface to start working from there. So basically we're going to give it a couple of minutes to cool down, and then I'm going to show you guys how to sand a small piece, and then from there it's pretty straightforward. It's a pretty easy thing to handle from there. So let's give it a few minutes to cool, and then I'll be showing you guys the next step. Okay, so now that we've got that bit covered, you want to grab your body file. Now there's a couple of adjustments. You can adjust this inwards, you can adjust it outwards, then it bends the blade kind of like a concave effect, and you can turn it the other way, then it bends outwards. So what I normally adjust mine is just slightly to the outwards, because you still want to give a little bit for your primer, and then you pour it on. And then once again you start below your lead, sand over your lead, past the top. Alright, so to give you guys an idea, that is kind of the start of the finished product. So you'll see, if you look carefully, you can see the join line in the lead. There's no lifting or anything going on. That's exactly what you want to see. During the scaving phase, if there's a place where the lead starts to pick up, stop. You need to re-lead it, reheat it. So then normally what we do from here, if there is big void spots like these, you can refill them, minimal heat, drip the lead into it, press it down, and then basically you build up the panel following that kind of a principle. And then around the edges here you just grab a file as well, more rasp than a file, to clear that. So that's basically how to do lead work. So you'll see the shavings that come off, it's not a dust, it's more almost like a shaving. So that also just helps so you don't put any dust particles into the atmosphere. So, and then basically what we're going to be doing from here on is, once we've got the voids filled and we've got it filed down again, got everything smoothed out, we'll be covering this with a SKN red oxide primer. In the South African market, these are supplied by Joe's Paint in Benoni. You can grab this from them. Fantastic primer. So that basically just helps seal over the lead and over the exposed roof panel. Not all primers are compatible with lead. I've had issues in the past with filler primers being stuck directly on lead, and the results are disastrous, where it starts bubbling a couple of months later on. So what I know for a fact is that a good red oxide seals very well over it. It's a primer that's been used for many decades to seal over lead work. So definitely that's an option. And then something that you want to do as well before you apply any primer is get it wiped down. Normally a rag with some benzene, or you can even use thinners or soapy water, just to neutralize any possibility of waxes or oils or anything that got left behind on it. So that's a must do as well before you apply any primer over it. So we've got our roof wrapped up, we've got our lead work coming into place now. So from here on, the principles are about the same. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video. Feel free to ask any questions, and thanks again for watching.